What if a single mistake could change 3 lives forever? This is the extraordinary story of a struggling single mother, a brilliant little girl, and a wealthy CEO whose worlds collide in the most unexpected way. As buried truths resurface and forgotten connections return, they discover that family isn't just about the past. It's about the future you choose to build together. Get ready for a heartwarming tale that will remind you of the power of love, resilience, and second chances. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Ella Swift woke up to the sound of her alarm clock buzzing in the dimly lit room. The small apartment she shared with her 4-year-old daughter Mia was quiet except for the faint hum of the city outside. She glanced at the clock, 5:30 a.m. It was another early morning, another long day ahead. Ella sighed, brushing a strand of hair from her face as she turned to check on Mia, who was still fast asleep in the small bed next to hers. Her peaceful face brought Ella a moment of comfort, a reminder of why she worked so hard every single day. Life hadn't been easy for Ella as a single mother. She juggled long hours as a barista at a downtown cafe while trying to provide a stable life for Mia. The apartment was modest, with peeling wallpaper and a leaky faucet in the kitchen, but it was all she could afford. Despite the challenges, Ella was determined to give Mia the best life she could. Mia was her world, her reason to keep going. As she prepared breakfast, a simple meal of toast and scrambled eggs, Ella's thoughts drifted to the day ahead. Her shift at the cafe would be long, and she still needed to figure out how to afford the supplies for Mia's preschool art show next week. The show was during her shift, and missing work wasn't an option. Her boss had made it clear that any absence could cost her the job. "Mommy," Mia's small voice broke through her thoughts. The little girl rubbed her eyes sleepily, her dark curls sticking up in all directions. "Good morning, sweetheart," Ella said softly, kneeling down to give her daughter a hug. "Did you sleep well?" Mia nodded, then looked up at her mother with those wide, curious eyes. "Mommy, why don't I have a daddy like the other kids?" The question hit Ella like a punch to the chest. It wasn't the first time Mia had asked, and each time it broke her heart a little more. She forced a smile, brushing a curl from Mia's face. "You do have a daddy, sweetheart. He can't be here right now. But that doesn't mean you're not loved." Mia seemed to accept this answer, as she always did, but Ella could see the questions lingering in her daughter's eyes. She pushed down the familiar ache in her chest and focused on getting them both ready for the day. By the time they arrived at the cafe, Ella was already feeling the weight of exhaustion. She tied her apron around her waist and settled Mia at a corner table with crayons and a notebook. The morning rush kept her busy, moving between tables and the espresso machine with practiced efficiency. During her break, she pulled out her phone with a sudden decision. She'd been thinking about creating a support group for weeks now, something for single mothers like herself who needed a safe space to share their struggles. Her fingers moved quickly across the screen as she created the group chat, Single Moms Support Circle. She began adding contacts, searching for her friend Alexandria Harris. In her exhaustion, scrolling through her contacts list, she accidentally selected a number she didn't recognize, Alexander Hunt. It was a number that had appeared weeks ago when Mia had been playing with her phone, somehow saved from what Ella assumed was a spam call. She didn't notice the mistake as she typed her first message. "Hey mamas. Safe space for real talk. No judgment, just survival." Across the city, in a sterile glass-walled boardroom on the 40th floor of a gleaming skyscraper, Alexander Hunt sat through another meaningless corporate meeting. His vice president droned on about quarterly projections while Alexander stared out at the city below, feeling nothing. At 33, he'd achieved everything society said should make him happy: wealth, success, power. Yet he felt emptier than ever. His phone buzzed. He glanced down, about to dismiss the notification, when something caught his attention. A group chat invitation. Single Mom Support Circle. His finger hovered over the decline button, but then a message appeared. "Hey mamas. Safe space for real talk. No judgment, just survival." There was something raw and genuine in those words that made him pause. In his world of carefully crafted corporate speak and artificial networking, authenticity was rare. He should leave the group. He knew that. It was clearly a mistake. But something stopped him. Curiosity? Loneliness? A desperate need to connect with something real? He watched as other messages began to appear. Women introducing themselves, sharing their struggles with a candor that shocked him. One talked about choosing between electricity and groceries. Another shared her fear of losing her housing. Their honesty was brutal and beautiful. When someone named Jasmine asked who Alex H. was, Ella responded, "My friend from the community center." Alexander stayed silent, watching the conversations unfold like a window into a world he'd never known existed. Over the next week, Alexander found himself obsessed with the group chat. Late at night in his penthouse, he would scroll through the messages, learning about struggles he'd never imagined. Sophie mentioned she couldn't afford her anxiety medication and was rationing pills. Tanya shared that her car had broken down, jeopardizing her retail job and her ability to get her daughter to daycare. These weren't abstract problems to be solved in a boardroom. These were real people, real mothers fighting every day just to survive. Alexander felt something shift inside him, a purpose he hadn't felt in years. He began researching, horrified by what he learned about poverty and single-parent households. The statistics were devastating, but the human stories were worse. He thought about his own wealth, sitting idle in accounts, and felt ashamed. He created a shell charity through his lawyer, then carefully orchestrated what he called contests in the group. A fake radio station promotion. A share your story competition with cash prizes. An anonymous benefactor wanting to support single mothers in the community. The group was skeptical at first. "Is this a scam?" Jasmine asked bluntly. But when the money actually appeared, when Ella won 2 tickets to Mia's preschool art show and Sophie received a gift card for her pharmacy, their caution turned to cautious gratitude. Alexander found himself checking the group constantly. When Ella posted about attending Mia's art show, her joy radiating through the screen, something warm bloomed in his chest. He couldn't remember the last time his money had meant something real. Finally, he couldn't just observe anymore. He needed to engage. As Alex H., he posted his first message, practical advice about negotiating with landlords, worded carefully to sound helpful rather than condescending. Within minutes, 3 women thanked him. But Jasmine was suspicious. "How do you know so much about corporate housing policies, Alex H.? You seem awfully informed for someone supposedly struggling like the rest of us." "Maybe I just research well," Alexander typed back, his heart racing. "Or maybe I've been through some things too." Ella jumped to his defense. "Everyone deserves privacy, Jazz. Alex H. has been nothing but helpful. We should respect that." Alexander stared at her message for a long time, feeling seen in a way he hadn't experienced in years. At the cafe, Mr. Leonard, an elderly regular who'd adopted Ella and Mia as surrogate family, noticed the change in her. "You're smiling at that phone an awful lot these days," he observed with a knowing twinkle in his eye. Ella blushed. "It's just my mom group. We're supporting each other through some tough times." "Support is good," Mr. Leonard said gently. "But don't forget to let yourself be happy too, dear. You deserve that." That evening, Ella posted photos from Mia's art show. The little girl beamed in front of her drawing, a colorful superhero family. Alexander smiled at the image, then noticed a close-up photo of Mia's drawing. In the corner, her small hand held the paper, and on her left wrist, clearly visible, was a distinctive crescent-shaped birthmark. Alexander's world stopped. Alexander stared at his phone screen, unable to breathe. The birthmark, that crescent moon shape on Mia's tiny wrist. His vision blurred as he looked down at his own left wrist, where an identical mark had been since birth. His family called it the Hunt Crescent, distinctive, rare, genetic. No, it couldn't be. But then he really looked at the photo of Mia, not just glancing, but truly seeing her for the first time. The shape of her face, the way her smile tilted slightly to the left. Her eyes, those bright, curious eyes that seemed to see everything. She looked like him. His hands shook as he stood from his desk, his mind racing through impossible possibilities. Common birthmarks. Coincidence. But even as he tried to rationalize, his heart knew. He moved to his office safe, fingers fumbling with the combination. Inside was a box he rarely opened. Personal items from before his wealth, before everything changed. He pulled out a photo from 5 years ago. David's wedding. The happiest weekend of his life before everything went wrong. And there, standing beside him in a blue dress, laughing at something he'd said, was Ella. Not some stranger who looked like her. Ella Swift. The woman whose memory had haunted him for 5 years. The woman he'd never stopped looking for. Oh God, he whispered, sinking into his chair. Mia. The timeline crashed over him like a wave. The wedding was 5 years ago. Mia was 4 years old. He'd left the wedding early for the company buyout. His phone had been replaced by corporate protocol, and Ella's number had been lost. He'd tried to find her, hired investigators, called David and Rachel repeatedly, but he'd only known her first name and that she was in college. The trail had gone cold, and she'd been pregnant, alone, raising their daughter without him. Alexander's carefully constructed world shattered. Joy and rage and grief all hit him at once. He had a daughter, a beautiful, bright daughter who drew superhero families and asked questions about her father. And Ella, strong, resilient Ella, had survived it all alone. He sat in his office until dawn, staring at the photos. Of Ella at the wedding, her eyes bright with possibility. Of Mia with her birthmark and his smile. He began researching Ella's history, finding gaps that aligned perfectly with a pregnancy and birth. Hospital records he shouldn't have accessed, but did anyway, desperate to understand. When David called about a morning meeting, Alexander's voice was hollow. Cancel everything. I need time. Alex? What's wrong? I found her, David. Ella. And I have a daughter. The silence on the other end was deafening. Alexander knew he had to tell her. Had to explain, apologize, beg for a chance to know his daughter. But how? Through the group chat where everyone would see? Privately, risking that she'd block him immediately? And what would he say? Sorry I abandoned you, but it was an accident. 3 days passed in agony. He was silent in the group chat, and he noticed others commenting on his absence. Ella posted once, "Hope Alex H. is okay. We miss your advice." Those simple words nearly broke him. On Friday evening, Tanya posted a meme about manifesting billionaire baby daddies, and everyone laughed. Something in Alexander snapped. He'd spent 3 days paralyzed by fear, but Mia deserved better. Ella deserved the truth. His hands trembled as he typed, deleted, and typed again. Finally, he took a photo of his wrist, the crescent birthmark clear and unmistakable. He attached it to a message he'd written and rewritten 100 times. At midnight, he pressed send. I have this same birthmark. I met someone 5 years ago at a wedding. I never forgot her, but I lost her contact information when my life changed overnight. I've been looking for her ever since. I think I just found her, and my daughter, in this group chat. Ella, it's me. Alex. From David and Rachel's wedding. I'm Alexander Hunt, and I think Mia is my daughter. Then he waited, his heart pounding, as his entire world hung in the balance. The group chat exploded. Within seconds, Tanya's frantic messages began flooding the screen. Wait, what? Alexander Hunt. The Alexander Hunt. Then came the screenshots, Wikipedia pages, Forbes articles, society photos of a man in expensive suits standing beside politicians and celebrities. Jasmine's message appeared in all caps. Ella, get online now. Sophie's quiet voice cut through the chaos. Oh my God, this is real. Ella's phone, sitting on her nightstand, lit up like a firework display. One notification. 5:20:47. The buzzing pulled her from an exhausted sleep, her heart immediately racing with worry that something was wrong with Mia. She grabbed the phone, squinting at the bright screen, and her world tilted sideways. She read Alexander's message once, twice, 3 times. Her hands began to shake so violently she nearly dropped the phone. The birthmark. David and Rachel's wedding. Alexander Hunt. The memories crashed over her like a tidal wave. That weekend 5 years ago. Alex with his easy smile and genuine laugh. The way he'd listened to her dreams about finishing college and making a difference. How he'd held her hand during the ceremony. Both of them strangers to everyone else, but somehow not to each other. The conversations that lasted until dawn. The connection that felt like coming home. And then he'd left. A business opportunity he couldn't miss. He'd given her his number, promised to call. But the number had been disconnected. Her searches for Alex Entrepreneur had led nowhere. She'd been alone when she discovered the pregnancy. Alone through the morning sickness and the fear. Alone when Mia was born. Now he was telling her he'd been looking for her? That he was a billionaire? That this was all some cosmic mistake? Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Anger surged through her, hot and sharp. Her response came from a place of pure protective instinct. This isn't funny. Whoever you are, this is cruel. Seconds later, another photo appeared. Alexander at the wedding. Younger, hopeful, wearing the same suit she remembered. Standing in the exact spot where they'd danced. Where he'd whispered that meeting her felt like fate. The phone slipped from Ella's hands onto the bed. Tears streamed down her face as 5 years of buried pain erupted to the surface. All the nights she'd cried alone. All the times she'd wondered if she'd imagined their connection. All the moments she'd told Mia that her daddy couldn't be there, hating herself for the lie. He'd been real. He'd been looking for her. And he was Alexander Hunt, a man whose wealth could have solved every problem she'd faced, while she'd been rationing groceries and choosing between electricity and heat. The group chat continued its chaos. Tanya sent a dozen more screenshots. Jasmine demanded answers. Sophie tried to calm everyone down, but Ella couldn't process any of it. She turned off her phone with trembling hands, plunging the room into silence. In his penthouse across the city, Alexander watched his phone screen with growing desperation. Ella had gone silent. The group was in turmoil. He'd broken everything with his impulsive confession, and now he didn't know how to fix it. His phone rang. "David, tell me you didn't just do what I think you did," his best friend said, his voice tight with concern. "I found her, David. I found Ella. And our daughter." Alexander's voice cracked on the last word. "I didn't know what else to do." Ella called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. She sat at her kitchen table in her pajamas, staring at nothing, while Mia slept peacefully in the next room. The weight of the revelation pressed down on her chest until she could barely breathe. When the knock came at her door an hour later, she knew it would be Jasmine. Her friend swept in with emergency childcare arranged for Marcus, took one look at Ella's face, and pulled her into a fierce hug. "Talk to me," Jasmine demanded, settling them both at the tiny kitchen table. "Everything." And Ella did. 5 years of secrets spilled out in a torrent of words and tears. The wedding weekend. The connection she'd felt with Alex. How he'd made her feel seen in a way no one else ever had. The disconnected number. The pregnancy test. The decision to keep Mia, even though she was terrified. The years of struggling alone, wondering if she'd made a mistake, if her daughter deserved better. "He left you," Jasmine said, her voice hard with protective anger. "He didn't know," Ella whispered. "Jasmine, he really didn't know. The number was disconnected. I tried to find him, but I only knew his first name. And now he's been in our group chat for weeks. He's been helping us. He's the one who paid for the art show tickets." Jasmine's expression shifted from anger to confusion to reluctant understanding. "The contests. The anonymous prizes. That was all him." Ella nodded, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "He was trying to help. In the only way he knew how." "What are you going to do?" Jasmine asked gently. "About Mia? I don't know," Ella admitted. "How do I tell her that the daddy she's been asking about is real? That he's been looking for us? That he's a billionaire, Jazz. His world and ours are completely different." "But Mia is his daughter," Jasmine said carefully. "She deserves to know her father. And maybe he deserves a chance to explain." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you're enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Across the city, Alexander paced his penthouse like a caged animal. David had arrived within an hour, and they sat in Alexander's living room overlooking the glittering city below. "I remember her from the wedding," David said quietly. "You couldn't stop talking about her for weeks afterward. Rachel and I wondered what happened." "My phone got replaced during the buyout," Alexander said, his voice hollow. "Corporate security protocol. Everything was transferred except personal contacts that weren't backed up. I lost her number. I tried to find her, David. I hired investigators. I searched for months." "I know you did," David replied. "I watched you tear yourself apart over it. But why didn't you ask Rachel for her contact information?" "Ella was her roommate." Alexander looked up sharply. "What?" "Rachel's college roommate. The girl in the blue dress. That was Ella Swift." David pulled out his phone. "Rachel's been feeling guilty for years about losing touch with her. She tried to reach out after graduation, but Ella had dropped out. Disappeared. Because she was pregnant," Alexander whispered. "With my daughter." David's expression hardened. "You need to fix this, Alex. Not with money. Not with your usual problem-solving approach. You need to actually show up. Be present. Prove that you're not just another wealthy man trying to buy his way into their lives." Later that evening, Patricia Montgomery appeared at Alexander's door, his assistant having leaked the situation to her. She swept in with legal documents and PR strategies, her mind already spinning the story. "We can manage this," she said briskly. "A private settlement, an NDA, carefully controlled public narrative." "Get out," Alexander said quietly. Patricia blinked. "Excuse me." "I said get out. You're fired. This isn't about image or PR or damage control. This is about my family, my daughter. And if you can't see that, then you don't belong here." Patricia's face flushed with anger, but she gathered her materials and left without another word. As the door closed behind her, Alexander felt something shift inside him. For the first time in years, he'd chosen something real over something profitable. His phone buzzed. A private message from Sophie in the mom group. "Whatever Ella decides, we're here for her. And I hope you understand what an incredible woman she is. What she's sacrificed. Don't let her down." Alexander stared at the message for a long time before typing his response. "I won't. I promise." Rachel Chin sat across from Ella at a quiet cafe, tears streaming down both their faces. It had been 5 years since they'd seen each other, since before Ella had withdrawn from everyone, drowning in the shame and fear of an unexpected pregnancy. "I'm so sorry," Rachel said, reaching across the table to grip Ella's hands. "I should have tried harder to find you. I didn't know about Mia. I didn't know you needed help. I pushed everyone away," Ella admitted. "I was embarrassed. Scared. I thought Alex had used me and disappeared. I didn't want anyone's pity." Rachel pulled out her phone, scrolling through old emails. "He didn't disappear by choice, Ella. Look." She turned the screen around, showing messages from 5 years ago. Alexander frantically asking if Rachel had any way to contact the amazing woman in the blue dress. Desperate texts asking for any information, a last name, a phone number, anything. Ella's breath caught as she read message after message. "He tried to find me. For months," Rachel confirmed. She showed more evidence. Private investigator reports listing dozens of women named Ella in the state, none matching. The company buyout happened faster than anyone expected. His phone was replaced by corporate security. It was a perfect storm of bad timing. Ella felt her anger begin to crack, revealing the grief underneath. "I spent 5 years thinking he abandoned us. And he spent 5 years thinking he'd lost you forever," Rachel said gently. "You both lost so much time. But maybe it's not too late to get some of it back." As Ella processed this information, absorbing the truth that shattered her carefully constructed narrative, Alexander sat in the very cafe where Ella worked, nursing a coffee he hadn't touched. He'd been coming here every day since the revelation, hoping to catch a glimpse of her, trying to understand the life she'd built. Mr. Leonard slid into the seat across from him without invitation. The elderly man's kind eyes were sharp with assessment. "You're that fancy man from the group chat. The one who's got our Ella all torn up inside." Alexander nodded, unable to speak around the lump in his throat. "Let me tell you something about that girl," Mr. Leonard said, his voice firm but not unkind. "She's worked herself to the bone for your daughter. Turned down dates, opportunities, everything. All for that little girl. I've watched her skip meals so Mia could eat. I've seen her come to work sick because she couldn't afford to miss a shift. She's the strongest person I know." "I know," Alexander whispered. "I should have been there." "Yes, you should have," Mr. Leonard agreed bluntly. "But you weren't. And now you're here. So the question is, are you here to play games? To throw money around and feel better about yourself? Or are you here to be a father?" Alexander met the old man's eyes. "I want to be a father. I don't know how. I'll probably be terrible at it. But I want to try. I want to know my daughter. His voice broke. "I want to be there for them." Mr. Leonard studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Being a father isn't about grand gestures or expensive gifts. It's about showing up. Every day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Can you do that?" "Yes," Alexander said with absolute certainty. "I can do that." The old man's expression softened. "Then you might just have a chance. But it's not up to me. It's up to Ella. And son, you'd better be ready to earn her trust back one day at a time." That evening, as Ella sat in her apartment trying to process everything Rachel had shown her, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "It's Alexander. Rachel gave me your real number. I know you need time. But when you're ready to talk, I'll be here. For as long as it takes. I'm not going anywhere this time." Ella stared at the message, her emotions a tangled mess of hope and fear and anger and longing. Finally, her fingers moved across the screen. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., the park by the pier. Come alone. She sent it before she could change her mind, then sat in the silence of her apartment, wondering if she was making the biggest mistake of her life, or finally giving herself and Mia the chance at a family they'd always deserved. The October sun cast long shadows across the park as Ella arrived early, her hands trembling around the coffee cup she couldn't seem to drink. She'd left Mia with Jasmine, unable to bring her daughter to this first meeting. Not yet. Not until she knew what Alexander truly wanted from their lives. She spotted him from across the lawn. He wore jeans and a simple sweater, looking nothing like the Forbes magazine photos Jasmine had bombarded her with. He looked like Alex, the man from the wedding who'd made her laugh until her sides hurt, who'd listened to her dreams with genuine interest, who'd held her like she was precious. Their eyes met across the distance, and Ella watched him take a shaky breath before walking toward her. He stopped a respectful distance away, giving her space, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly. "I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," Ella admitted, her voice steadier than she felt. "I've spent 5 years angry at you. At a ghost. And now I find out you were never the person I thought you were." Alexander flinched, but didn't look away. "I know. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry I lost your number. I'm sorry I didn't find you sooner. I'm sorry you went through the pregnancy alone, that you've been struggling to raise Mia by yourself. I'm sorry for all of it." "Sorry doesn't erase 5 years," Ella said, her anger finally surfacing. "Do you know what it's like? Being pregnant and alone? Giving birth without anyone there? Watching other kids with their fathers while your daughter asks why she doesn't have one?" "No," Alexander said simply. "I don't. And I can't imagine how hard that was. But Ella, I tried to find you. I hired investigators. I searched for months. I never stopped thinking about you, about that weekend. You weren't just some woman I met at a wedding. You were the first real thing that had happened to me in years." Ella felt tears prick her eyes but refused to let them fall. "Rachel showed me the messages. The investigator reports. I know you tried. But knowing that doesn't make the last 5 years any easier to forgive." "I'm not asking you to forgive me," Alexander said, taking a careful step closer. "I'm asking for a chance. A chance to know Mia. To be her father, if you'll let me. Whatever that looks like, however you need it to happen, I'll do it. I'll follow your lead." "Why?" Ella demanded. "Why do you care now? You've been a billionaire this whole time. You could have any life you wanted. Why do you want this one?" Alexander's composure cracked, his voice raw with emotion. "Because for 5 years, I've had everything except what matters. Money, success, power, all of it felt meaningless. And then I found myself in that group chat, watching you and these incredible women fight every day just to survive. Watching you love Mia with everything you have. And I realized I've been searching for something real my entire life. Then I saw that birthmark, and everything clicked into place. That's my daughter, Ella. My family. And I've already missed 4 years of her life. I don't want to miss another day." Ella studied his face, searching for deception, for ulterior motives. But all she saw was genuine pain and desperate hope. She thought about Mia's questions, her daughter's longing for a father. She thought about the years of struggling alone, of being so tired she could barely stand. "If I let you into her life," Ella said slowly, "you don't get to leave when it gets hard. You don't get to decide being a father is too complicated or doesn't fit your lifestyle. She's already been without you for 4 years. I won't let you break her heart. I won't," Alexander promised. "I swear to you, Ella. I'm not going anywhere." They sat on a bench overlooking the water, and for hours they talked. Ella told him about the pregnancy, the difficult labor, Mia's first words and first steps. Alexander listened to every detail, tears streaming down his face when Ella showed him photos and videos on her phone. His daughter's entire life, compressed into a digital archive he'd never known existed. In return, he told her about the company buyout, the corporate takeover that had consumed his life. How he'd woken up one day with more money than he could spend, but no one to share it with. How he'd searched for her until his investigators told him it was hopeless. How joining that group chat had been the first time in years he'd felt connected to something real. "I want to help," Alexander said carefully. "Not just with money, though I know that could make things easier. But I want to be there. For Mia's bedtime. For school events. For ordinary moments. I want to learn how to be her father. Ella looked at him for a long moment. We'll start slow. You don't tell her who you are yet. She knows you as Alex H. from my mom group. We can build on that. Let her get to know you before we drop the daddy bomb. Relief flooded Alexander's face. Whatever you think is best. You know her. I trust your judgment. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Ella felt something shift in her chest. The anger she'd carried for 5 years began to ease, making room for something else. Not forgiveness yet, but maybe the possibility of it. Maybe the beginning of something new. The first meeting was at the zoo. Mia held Ella's hand tightly, her eyes wide with excitement and nervousness. Ella had explained that Alex H. from her mom group wanted to meet her, that he was a friend who cared about them. Nothing more. Not yet. Alexander arrived with his hands empty, following Ella's strict instructions about no expensive gifts. When Mia peeked out from behind Ella's legs, his breath caught. Seeing her in person, hearing her voice, watching her move, it was overwhelming. She had his smile, his grandmother's eyes, his curiosity about the world. Hi, Mia said shyly. Are you Alex? I am. Alexander managed, kneeling down to her level. And you must be Mia. Your mom has told me so much about you. She says you're an amazing artist. Mia's face lit up. I draw superhero families. Do you like superheroes? I do, Alexander said honestly. Though I think the real heroes are people like your mom. She's pretty super, don't you think? Mia nodded enthusiastically. And just like that, the ice was broken. They spent the day wandering through exhibits, Alexander listening as Mia chattered about every animal they saw. He learned that she loved elephants because they never forget, that she wanted to be a veterinarian when she grew up, that her favorite color was purple, but also sometimes green. Every detail felt precious, like pieces of a puzzle he'd been missing his entire life. Ella watched them together, her heart doing complicated things in her chest. Alexander was gentle with Mia, patient with her endless questions, genuinely engaged in her 4-year-old observations about the world. This wasn't a billionaire trying to buy his way into a child's affections. This was a man desperate to know his daughter, willing to meet her exactly where she was. When Mia reached up to hold Alexander's hand as they walked to the penguin exhibit, Ella saw tears shine in his eyes. He looked at her over Mia's head, and the gratitude in his expression made her throat tight. The visits became regular. Twice a week at first, then 3 times, then almost daily. Alexander learned Mia's schedule, arranged his business around her preschool pickup times, showed up for ordinary moments. He read her bedtime stories over video calls, attended her preschool performances, sat on the floor of their tiny apartment building blocks, and having tea parties. The mom group watched the development with fascination and support. Tanya posted periodic updates. Day 23 of Billionaire Dad Redemption Arc. Sophie sent encouraging messages. Jasmine remained cautiously protective but admitted he seemed genuinely committed. One evening, after putting Mia to bed, Alexander and Ella sat in her small living room drinking tea. He looked around at the cramped space, the peeling wallpaper, the leaky faucet Ella kept meaning to fix but couldn't afford to hire help for. Let me help, he said quietly. Not with a mansion or anything dramatic, but a better apartment, a safer neighborhood, a more reliable car. Please, Ella, let me do this. Ella's first instinct was to refuse, to cling to her independence. But she was so tired. Tired of worrying about rent, about keeping the heat on, about whether she could afford new shoes when Mia outgrew her current ones. Not charity, she said finally. Child support. Set up a trust for Mia's education. Help with living expenses. But I still work. I still provide for us. I'm not your dependent, Alexander. I'm Mia's mother, and we're partners in raising her. Partners, Alexander agreed, relief evident in his voice. Equal partners. I would never want you to feel like you owe me anything. This is my responsibility as her father, one I should have been handling all along. Within 2 weeks, they'd moved to a modest but comfortable apartment in a better school district. Ella kept her job at the cafe. She wasn't ready to give up her independence entirely, but reduced her hours. For the first time in 5 years, she wasn't constantly exhausted, constantly worried about making ends meet. Alexander learned the routines. He mastered ponytails and princess movies, became an expert at reading the same bedtime story 17 times without complaint. He carried Band-Aids and juice boxes, knew which snacks were acceptable and which would cause a meltdown. One day, Mia looked up at him during a trip to the park and asked, "Alex, why don't you have a family?" Alexander's heart stopped. He glanced at Ella, who nodded slightly, permission to tell whatever truth he felt ready for. "I do have a family," he said carefully, pulling Mia into his lap. "I have people I care about very much, including you and your mom. But you don't live with us," Mia observed with 4-year-old logic. "Not yet," Alexander said. "But that doesn't mean you're not important to me. Sometimes families look different than we expect. What matters is love and showing up for each other." Mia seemed to accept this, snuggling against his chest. Over her head, Alexander met Ella's eyes, and something passed between them. Understanding. Trust. The fragile beginning of something that might become more than just co-parenting. 3 months after their first park meeting, Ella sat at her kitchen table with a cup of coffee and her phone. The mom group was active as always. Tanya sharing a meme about toddler tantrums, Sophie asking for advice about her daughter's school situation, Jasmine posting photos from Marcus's soccer game. They'd all rallied around Ella as her story unfolded. When she'd nervously announced that Alex H. was actually Mia's father, the group had exploded with support. They'd helped her navigate the complicated emotions, offered perspective when she felt overwhelmed, celebrated small victories when Alexander proved himself reliable. "We're having a meeting tomorrow," Jasmine posted. "All of us. In person. It's time we actually met this billionaire who joined our group by accident." Ella smiled. "He'll be terrified, but I think it's a good idea." The next day, Alexander found himself in a community center surrounded by the women he'd been silently supporting for months. They looked at him with expressions ranging from curiosity to skepticism to cautious approval. "So," Tanya said, arms crossed, "you're the mysterious benefactor. The contests, the prizes, that was all you." Alexander nodded, suddenly feeling like he was facing a tribunal. "Yes, I wanted to help, but I didn't think you'd accept direct charity. So I found creative ways." "That's manipulative," Jasmine said bluntly. "It is," Alexander agreed. "And I apologize. I've learned a lot over these months. About struggling, about pride, about what people actually need versus what I assumed they needed. If I could do it over, I'd be more honest from the start." Sophie spoke up, her voice gentle. "But you did help. Real help. My anxiety medication, Tanya's car repairs, Ella's art show tickets. You saw needs and met them when no one else did." "I had the resources," Alexander said simply. "Using them to actually improve lives felt. It felt like the first meaningful thing I'd done in years. You all taught me more than I could ever teach you." The women exchanged glances, some silent communication passing between them. Finally, Ella stood. "He's not perfect," she said to her friends. "But he's shown up every single day for 3 months. He's learning to braid hair and pack preschool lunches. He reads Mia bedtime stories and knows all the words to her favorite songs. He's trying to be the father she deserves." Tanya's expression softened. "And what about you, Ella? What does he mean to you?" Ella looked at Alexander, really looked at him. The man who'd accidentally joined their group chat. The man who'd been searching for her for 5 years. The man who'd learned to be a father through patience and genuine love for their daughter. "I think," she said slowly, "he means I'm not alone anymore. That Mia has a father who will show up for her. And maybe we're building something new. Not what we lost 5 years ago, but something better because we've both grown." Alexander's eyes shone with unshed tears. "I love her," he said to the group. "I love Mia more than I knew it was possible to love anyone. And Ella," he turned to her, "you're the strongest, most incredible person I've ever met. I don't deserve either of you, but I promise I'll spend every day trying to be worthy of the chance you've given me." The room was silent for a moment. Then Mr. Leonard, who'd been invited as honorary grandpa, started clapping. The women joined in, and the tension broke into something warmer, something like acceptance. Months later, on Mia's 5th birthday, the small apartment was filled with people. The mom group, Rachel and David, Mr. Leonard, even some of Alexander's reformed corporate friends who'd learned to appreciate authenticity. Mia ran between them all, wearing a princess dress and a superhero cape, because she decided she could be both. As she opened presents, she pulled Alexander down to whisper in his ear, "Alex, I have a question." "Anything, sweetheart. The other kids at school talk about their daddies. And you do all the daddy things. So are you my daddy?" The room fell silent. Everyone watched as Alexander looked at Ella, asking permission with his eyes. She nodded, smiling through tears. Alexander pulled Mia into his arms. Yes, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I'm your daddy. I always have been, even when I didn't know where you were. And I always will be. Is that okay with you? Mia's face broke into the biggest smile he'd ever seen. I knew it, she announced to the room. I could tell because we have the same smile. And the same moon on our wrists. As the party erupted in celebration, Alexander caught Ella's eye across the room. She was laughing and crying at the same time, Jasmine's arm around her shoulders. He thought about the accidental group chat invitation, the months of anonymous support, the moment he'd seen that birthmark and recognized his daughter. Sometimes mistakes weren't really mistakes at all. Sometimes they were the universe's way of bringing together people who were always meant to be a family. It had taken 5 years, a wrong number, and a support group for single mothers, but they'd found their way back to each other. And this time, Alexander wasn't going anywhere. He was finally home. 1 year after the accidental group chat invitation that changed everything, Ella stood in front of her bathroom mirror, hands trembling as she stared at the small white stick. 2 pink lines. Clear and unmistakable. Pregnant. Her mind raced back to 5 years ago. The terror, the isolation, the overwhelming fear of facing pregnancy alone. But this time was different. This time, she wasn't alone. She found Alexander in the living room of the home they now shared, a comfortable house in a good neighborhood where Mia had her own room decorated with superhero posters and art supplies. He was helping Mia with a school project, their heads bent together over construction paper, their matching smiles evident even from behind. Mia, sweetheart, Ella said, her voice only slightly shaky. Can you go play in your room for a few minutes? I need to talk to Daddy about something. Mia looked up, intuitive as always. Is everything okay, Mommy? Everything's perfect, Ella assured her. I promise. Once Mia had skipped off to her room, Alexander turned to Ella with concern. What's wrong? You look pale. Ella crossed the room and placed the pregnancy test in his hands. Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. We're having a baby. Alexander stared at the test, his expression cycling through shock, disbelief, and then pure joy. You're pregnant? Yes, Ella said, tears streaming down her face. And I know we didn't plan this, and maybe it's too soon, but Alexander, I'm not scared this time. Because I have you. He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight she could feel his heart racing against her chest. Not scared. Ella, I'm terrified. What if I mess this up? What if I'm not a good enough father? She pulled back to look at him, cupping his face in her hands. You're already an amazing father to Mia. You've proven that every single day for the past year. This baby will be so lucky to have you from the very beginning. Alexander's eyes filled with tears. From the very beginning, he repeated softly. I get to be there this time. For the ultrasounds, the midnight cravings, the birth. All of it, Ella confirmed. We're doing this together. They told Mia that evening at dinner. Her reaction was immediate and enthusiastic. A baby? I'm going to be a big sister? Can I teach them how to draw? Can they sleep in my room? Will they like superheroes? Alexander laughed, pulling his daughter into his lap. You'll be the best big sister. And yes, you can teach them everything you know. I'll protect them, Mia announced seriously. Like a superhero. Nobody will ever hurt my baby brother or sister. The mom group exploded with congratulations when Ella shared the news. Tanya sent a string of celebratory emojis. Sophie posted about how beautiful it was that this baby would have both parents from day one. Jasmine, ever practical, started a registry and began organizing a baby shower. This is what we always wanted for you, Jasmine said during a coffee date, her hand covering Ella's. A partner. Support. The chance to enjoy pregnancy instead of just surviving it. I keep waiting for something to go wrong, Ella admitted. For this happiness to be too good to be true. That's trauma talking, Jasmine said gently. You've been in survival mode for so long, you forgot what it feels like to actually live. Let yourself be happy, Ella. You've earned it. The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Alexander attended every doctor's appointment, his hand always finding Ella's during ultrasounds. When they learned they were having a boy, he cried openly in the examination room. Mia insisted they name him something strong, settling on James Alexander Hunt after much serious deliberation. Alexander transformed one of the spare rooms into a nursery, letting Mia help choose colors and decorations. He read parenting books obsessively, asked Mr. Leonard for advice, and had long conversations with David about fatherhood. He wanted to get everything right this time. One evening, 8 months into the pregnancy, Ella found Alexander sitting in the nursery, holding a tiny blue onesie. "I keep thinking about everything I missed with Mia," he said quietly. "Her first kick, her birth, those first precious months. And I'm grateful, so grateful, that I get to experience it with James. But it still hurts, knowing what I lost." Ella sat beside him, taking his hand. "You didn't lose it, Alexander. You were robbed of it by circumstances neither of us could control. But look at what we've built. Mia adores you. She doesn't remember a time when you weren't her daddy. That's what matters." "I love you," Alexander said suddenly. "I should have said it sooner, but I wanted to prove myself first. To show you I could be the partner and father you both deserved. But Ella, I love you. Not just because you're Mia's mother or because you're carrying my son. I love you for your strength, your resilience, your incredible heart. I love the life we're building together." "I love you too," Ella whispered. "I think I never stopped loving you, even when I thought I hated you. Even through all the pain and anger, part of me was always waiting to find you again." When James Alexander Hunt was born on a crisp spring morning, the delivery room was filled with love. Alexander held Ella's hand through every contraction, whispering encouragement and promises. When their son finally arrived, crying lustily, Alexander cut the umbilical cord with shaking hands. Mia arrived later that day with Jasmine, tiptoeing into the hospital room with wide eyes. She peered into the bassinet where her baby brother slept, then looked up at her parents with wonder. "He's so tiny. And he has our moon." Sure enough, on James's tiny left wrist was the crescent-shaped birthmark that marked him as a Hunt, the same mark that had brought this family together. As Ella watched Alexander hold their newborn son while Mia snuggled against his side, she thought about that exhausted morning a year ago when she'd accidentally added a billionaire to her mom group. That simple mistake had unraveled 5 years of pain and created something beautiful in its place. The group chat buzzed with congratulations and photos. Tanya posted, "From accidental addition to intentional family. This is the best love story I've ever seen." And it was. Not perfect, but real. Built on second chances, forgiveness, and the courage to choose love even after loss. Their family had been broken and scattered, but now they were whole. Alexander looked up from his son to meet Ella's eyes, his expression full of wonder and gratitude. "Thank you," he said simply, "for giving me a chance, for letting me be their father, for building this family with me." "Thank you for finding us," Ella replied, "for never giving up, for showing up every day and proving that some mistakes are really miracles in disguise." Outside the hospital window, the city sparkled with possibility. Somewhere out there, other single mothers were fighting their battles, supporting each other in group chats, surviving one day at a time. And in this room, one of them had found her happy ending, not because a billionaire rescued her, but because 2 broken people had chosen to heal together and build something new. Their family was finally complete. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.